In this third video from War, Art and Visual Culture London, Professor Vivienne Jabri from War Studies, King's College London, talks to Hrair Sarkissian, visual artist. I hope you enjoy this video.
Okay, so let's start this session because we're really seriously running out of time, and there's someone in Beirut waiting for a Skype call from us. I have great pleasure in introducing Hrair Sarkissian. Hrair is an Armenian who emerges from the Syrian context. He is from Syria, of Armenian origin, and he'll talk through some of his works today, and then we'll have a conversation, and then we'll include you as well. I should say a couple of words about Hrair's background. He basically started learning photography in his father's photography studio. And from what I know of the Armenian community in Syria, who ended up in Syria after the Armenian Genocide, essentially, a lot of Armenians actually took up photography. So, you know, it's very interesting. And Hrair works with photography, he works with film, he is widely shown. He's currently based in London, but unfortunately we're going to be losing him rather soon because of Brexit. So he's leaving London and going to The Hague in the Netherlands, unfortunately. But we'll have a very interesting discussion today, primarily focused on Hrair's work.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will start from showing my latest project and go backwards. So I will start with this project. It's called Final Flight. It's about a bird called Northern Bald ibis, and it's over 5,200 years old. The bird mentioned in the Old Testament as the fertility messenger. The Egyptians considered the bird a god Thoth, which is the god of wisdom and writing. And in Islam, the birds used to be a guide for the people who went to Mecca for Hajj. So they followed the bird during migratory journey. So this bird existed in Palmyra in Syria until 1930s. And then it was extinct, disappeared, and in the late 80s, the Syrian government confirmed the extinction of this bird. And in 2002, the Bedouins found a colony of 7 birds nesting near Palmyra again. So they informed the government, and of course the government thought this is an anecdote, so they didn't follow up. These 7 birds were actually migrated from Ethiopia, the Midlands of Ethiopia, and among these 7 there was one female who knew the migratory route. So the other 6 birds followed this bird during a 6-month journey twice a year. So there is this Italian biologist, Gianluca Serra, who heard about this story, and he flew to Palmyra to confirm the existence of these birds again, and he lived in Palmyra for 9 years. And then, with the help of the first Syrian lady, they opened a breeding center in Palmyra, and they started to make more babies in Palmyra. So these birds, what they did, winter time, they traveled to Ethiopia, crossing over 8 countries, 7 to 8 countries. So the adults used to fly all the way to Ethiopia, but the young ones, they didn't, physically they couldn't. So the first stop was Saudi Arabia. And that's where they stopped, and then they came back. They stayed there, and then end of the winter they came back to Palmyra. So what happened is the numbers of these birds started to increase within the coming, I think, 7 years, 8 years. But what happened when they were flying over Saudi Arabia, the Saudis used to hunt these birds again, to hunt them down and to stuff them, and they made them into like a more an object in their houses. So what happened is the number decreased. In 2013, the last 3 out of 17 were seen in Midlands of Ethiopia, and in 2014 they saw Zenobia, which is the only female bird who so they saw her for the last time in Palmyra, skies of Palmyra, and the bird is extinct again. So this bird exists in Europe and in northern Africa, also in southern Turkey, but they are not migratory. They all live in breeding centers. So the migratory birds are extinct. They do not exist anymore. They are trying recently now in Spain and Italy to introduce, to teach them to travel. So what I did is I did a project, and it's more like an installation project where I found, I casted the skull, one skull of these birds, because the skull also red listed in Europe, so we cannot ship it to any other country within Europe as well. So I found a small zoo in Granada in Spain where they kindly borrowed us one skull, and we 3D the skull, and we made 7 casts of this skull, handly painted. And this is initially how the story started in 2002, where the Bedouins found 7 birds. So this is a close detail of the skull. And next to it we did, I also did a map, which is the migratory route. It starts from Palmyra all the way to Ethiopia, and then back again from a different route. They go back again to Syria. And within the same installation, there's also a 9 hours video, which is the journey, the migratory journey of these birds, filmed from above. It starts from in Palmyra with the same. We kept the same height of the bird and the same speed when they fly, and it goes all the way to Ethiopia, and we ended up with 9 hours film. And this is a photo that were photographed by an Italian diplomat in 2009 in skies of Palmyra, which I added to the same work. So in 2014, and this is, I did my first video. I usually do only photography, and this is my first video experiment. Since the war started in Syria, I never wanted to do any work that deals directly with the war for many reasons. Morally is one of them. And so what I did is I wanted to, I came up with the idea of doing something to work on about our house, where I grew up and where my parents are still living now in Damascus. So I built a mock-up building of the apartment. They lived the ground floor on the left. So I built this mock-up, and I worked with an architect, and my father sent me pictures of the building from outside, which that was quite difficult because the building is door to the Russian embassy in Damascus. It's very high security area, and it is very difficult to take pictures, or even somebody goes inside if he doesn't live there. So my father, he took pictures and sent it to me, and I worked with an architect for 2 months to build this mock-up. It was 150 centimeters by 240 the width, and 200 the height, 250 the width, and 150 the depth. And it was all built with the same raw materials that is used for building a building in the region, with bricks and concrete, etc. So So, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to destroy the building after we finished building the mock-up. So with the sledgehammer, every time I hit the building, I took a picture. So I ended up with 650 stills. I'm going to show you only 10, which you can see the process. So the destruction process took 7 hours. It was completely run. So we broke 2 sledgehammers because the materials we used was really strong, and sometimes when I just hit the model, it just bounced back, so nothing happened, because I'm physically very strong. So the idea of this project was for me just, I have always feared that something is going to happen to the house, to my parents, and because I haven't been back since 2011, so I don't know, and the only thing, my main fear was that something is going to happen to the house and I lose all the memories. And so it was a 2-channel video. Next to it there was a video of me hitting the model with the sledgehammer. The third one is from 2012, and it's about the Armenians who, during the Armenian Genocide in 1915, who were forcibly converted into Islam, just for the sake of escape the sword, getting killed, or they were also forced to convert, especially women. And these ones, until today, they are called the ones who fled the edge of the sword. This is something that exists in Turkey until today. And the numbers, it's unclear, but it's over 2 million people who were forced to convert. None of these were, of course, registered in the Ottoman government. So what, and they also called it dolma in Turkish, which applies also for the Jewish who used to live in Thessaloniki in Greece, and they converted into Islam 16th century, and that name kept until today, until the day that there was 1923 when the exchange population happened between Turkey and Greece, and so the ones who converted into Islam, which are Muslim people, but they kept, the Turks kept calling them Donme, which means the converted. So these people usually, so the story this happened with when Armenian Turkish journalist, he brought documents to the Turkish public. His name is Hrair. He brought documents to the Turkish public that one of the daughters of, adopted daughters of Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the Turkish Republic, is actually Armenian. So he brought documents that Kemal Atatürk adopted this girl, and the girl was named Safra in Turkish, which is the name of the second, now it's the third airport in Istanbul. And Safra was the first woman fighter, air war, plane, Air Force. First woman Air Force fighter in Turkey, and she is the woman who also bombed Dersim, which was also, there was a big massacre, also, I think 25,000 people died from that. So Hrair, the Armenian journalist, he brought these documents to the public, and of course that was accepted. And Hrair was murdered. He was stabbed in front of his office in 2017 by, no, not 2017 by a by 17 years old nationalist, 2007, sorry. He was stabbed in 2007 by a 17 years old nationalist in front of his office. So this phenomena exists until today, where people, especially in eastern Anatolia, where Armenians were located before and after the genocide, so they start to dig their stories, family stories, with the help of Dink Foundation, which is an Armenian newspaper, and also it's a foundation. They start digging their Armenian roots, and they start to find out that actually they have Armenian roots within the family, but it was never mentioned in the family. So one of the stories is actually the lawyer of Hrant Dink, Hrair Sarkissian. She's a writer now too. She wrote a story about her grandmother that she never spoke about the story of her family, where she came from, until the day she was dying. And she called Fathia her granddaughter, and she started to speak with her in a very weird language. Of course, Fathia, she did not understand what she was saying until after she died, and she found out that actually she's talking to her in Armenian. And that's when things started to trigger more. So what I did is I went to Istanbul. It took me 3 years to find these people in Istanbul, because they live in complete secrecy. They do not reveal their identity. So what they do is usually they come from Eastern Anatolia, from small villages or small towns. They move into a bigger city such as Istanbul, and they go to the Armenian church and get baptized and become a Christian. And when they get baptized, they also take an Armenian name. But this name stays in secret. They do not reveal to anyone in public or in any kind of paper. So so what I did, I found 9 people, and one of them is a woman who all converted into Christianity, but they live in secrecy in small communities in Istanbul. So I went to their houses one by one, and they told me their stories. And then I took a picture of them in their house as the only place for them where they feel safe to tell me who they are. So I'll show you a couple of images. It's light, so you can't see.
The lights off?
Pablo, can we put the lights on? So this is, for instance, one image. It's a photograph of a family, 11 siblings, only one brother who converted, and the rest did not, because they didn't want to be into trouble, actually. Thank you. Here.
Okay, so I'll start us off and then we can expand the conversation a bit, because I know you guys haven't had much time to interact with our speakers. Why I'm really interested in Hrair's work, and we got on the minute we met through an introduction that was enacted by Cecile, who had to leave earlier. I went over to Hrair's studio in Hackney, and he actually showed me the video of him smashing his parents' building, and it kind of brought home the idea of this combination of guilt, having left the parents behind, if you like, and you place yourself right in the middle of the, if you like, of the action, you kind of reveal that it's a sort of what I consider to be the vulnerability of the exile, because here you are, relatively safe, and there they are, the family over there, and angry, yes. You also place that vulnerability, I think, comes from a sort of, if you like, a microcosm of a psychoanalytic. There's a psychoanalytic moment there where you're, smashing the memories that are held in this building. And one of the reasons I was saying why I'm interested in Hrair Sarkissian and why we got on so well is that most of my work is based on the notion of subjectivity and what conflict and war do to subjectivity and fragmentation, complexity, and so on. Except that I write it in words, in my academic stuff, because I'm a theorist doing politics. And here's Hrair capturing that complexity in his work. You saw it, and you can see it in Unexposed, you see it in Final Flight, and you've seen it in Homesick as well, and his other works. So, just I have a question about this intersection between official stories, official narratives, if you like, the official record, including the archival record, and then these personal stories that you're very, very interested in, this idea of memory. But then memory too is a complex thing, so it becomes as complex as the narrations of the state, if you will. And then I remembered your contribution to the conflict and photography exhibition at Tate Modern, where you just see the outside of the Turkish archives. I think because they wouldn't let you in.
Yeah.
Can you say more about?
The Turkish archive project, it's called History. It's basically a history without the H, the missing H. And what happened is, in that project, I was visiting an exhibition organized by the City Hall in Istanbul. So they had this massive timeline of the beginning of the Ottoman Empire until modern day Turkey. So each year there was a major event that was mentioned on this timeline, but except there was one year was missing, which was 1915. In that year nothing happened, and for me that's the year where everything happened, and that's why the course of my grandparents' life, my parents and us changed. Among other, of course, like 1.5 million. So that was for me. It was the trigger to go to this. It was a challenge because I knew I would be refused in many of these places where I went, like National Archive Center, libraries, because I have such an Armenian name. And the moment they read a letter, they say there is Yan at the end of the name. Immediately they become very suspicious. And I could see immediately in their eyes the answer was yes or no, straight away. So what happened is I wanted to photograph these archives, these books, and some of them, all of them, I was not allowed to touch any of these materials. Either in a public library, I was not allowed to touch. And some of the places I was followed with 2 guards who wanted to look at. Every time I set up the camera, they wanted to look from the viewfinder what I am photographing, and they took digital also copies as well. So for me, that was very interesting to do. It was kind of facing history, just being there and facing history, facing all these books, all these documents. Some of them are open and some of them are not.
So they wouldn't let you in. But did you, I mean, your name says it all, doesn't it?
It does.
Your name captures 1915,
Yes.
essentially, and it can't be ignored, and they know it full well. But did you say anything to them? Was there?
No, I didn't. No, I mean, the moment I say why I am doing this, they would immediately say no. I mean, even when I used to go to Turkey a lot, but I stopped since 2012. I never revealed that I am Armenian. I always say I am Syrian. And it was very ironic. Whenever I go to a restaurant, they bring me the Turkish menu, not the English menu. So I said, but so I don't read Turkish, but you look Turkish.
I get that.
Yeah, I mean, even here in Hackney, a taxi driver says 6 o'clock in the morning, says you're Turkish, and I get really upset. You know, it's really upsetting that you did this to me, and I am here because of you, and now you say like we are family. You know, it has this kind of approach. Yeah.
Yes. You talk about the unfolding of a story, and I think someone else mentioned, I think it was Donald who probably earlier used that same word. And I'm wondering why the medium of photography allows you, and how it allows you to capture this notion of the unfolding of a story, or even a fragmented story.
I was raised up with a camera, so it's for me. I think photography. It was the only medium I was brought up, and it's quite recent that I started doing video. Even when I do video, it's very photographic. I mean, it's based on still images. So I think it's photography. An image gives time to the audience. When they look at it, just they take the time they need to look at it, and they understand and get feelings. I think that's really, for me, in my work, it's really important.
But you're not working with linear stories, you're working with traces of memory that emerge rather unexpectedly. You know, subject might be walking down the street, and then, as Julia Kristeva says, she's walking along the street in Saint-Germain, and suddenly a Bulgarian song comes into her head, Julia Kristeva being French of Bulgarian origin. And how do you, in a sense, attempt to capture what's really quite uncapturable? Because we're talking about traces of memory, these traces are ephemeral. They're there one moment and then they're gone. And you seem to manage to do that in your work, I think. Or is it just me reading?
No, I think I put a lot of emotions. I think that's what helps me to capture things that are not there anymore, you know, things that we don't see anymore. I think that's a very quite important fact for me, that an image has, even if the person who's looking at the image does not know the history, but at least there is something that clicks emotionally, feelings. The viewer, and that's what I always rely on when I do a work, start something.
There's a psychoanalytic trope in your work all the time, and I wondered if in your background were you interested in psychoanalysis?
No. I was interested only in photography. No, I've never.
But you can see why someone interested in especially psychoanalytic theory would
follow me.
Would follow you, and not so much follow you, but find in your work something of interest.
I had that, yes, but I was never interested. No, I didn't have interest in.
So just finally, from me, or for the time being at least, the work on the final flight, is that in reference to, at the danger of sounding somewhat banal, is it about extinction, or is it about migration and loss?
I think it's
especially
about,
given
it's about three of them, yes. I kind of also, when I read the story of this bird, I didn't know about the bird. I didn't know that this bird existed, and then I think last year I found out that the Syrian government actually, they made stamps, post stamps for this of this bird, and that was very interesting for him. But I forgot the question.
So is it about extinction?
Yeah,
or is
it is extinction, but it's also about what happened and what is happening on the ground to the Syrian people as well. also with the interference of politics, and I mean migration also, they just dispersed everywhere, and of course they will, each one will just get mingled with other diasporas, other communities. I don't know what's going to happen next, but for me it was kind of approachment to this, also what was happening on the ground, and still happening, it didn't stop.
Okay, let's open it out because we're gradually running out of time, well actually very quickly running out of time. So, do people have any questions, please? Yeah, Alicia.
Yes, one question, thank you. I was really interested in your statement about memory contained within your house. So if the house was destroyed, the memories were destroyed. And I found that concept quite interesting, that memories lived within a place for you, when, of course, physically they don't. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, about how you feel that they're within something rather than obviously within you?
I think there is a kind of comfort also knowing that, I mean, your memories are safe in this place. I think that's why, that's the thing what makes me worried, that I will lose memory. But I think I kind of related to the physical aspect too, that if I go to our sitting room, I remember these stories, you know, I remember, I think, more stories if I visit the location, or like pick up a tool, or, you know, this kind of things. In that sense, yes.
But there's something about the materiality of the building itself, and just sort of other question, which was this idea that, in a sense, the building containing those memories, you always remember. You remember the buildings you lived in as a child, and so there's a powerful sense of connection to the building itself. So I find it really interesting that you brought in an architect and you absolutely replicated to the nth degree the building that you're
yeah, because I wanted to make it to look as real as possible. Yeah, that was quite important for me.
Yeah. And it was shown in Beirut.
It was shown.
How did the audience in Beirut think? Because they have had their experience of buildings and turned into rubble, and this is the Lebanese civil war, which went on for years and years. How did they react to your work?
Yeah, I mean, the work was well received, and I mean, I don't know. I didn't encounter anyone who I spoke later about the work, how the public reacted. But I mean, they all liked it. But I mean, that's very common. Everybody likes it.
Everyone likes your work.
No. I mean, in the region, everybody likes everything. I didn't get like a feedback commenting on the work or how they felt.
Yeah. Because the interesting thing about Beirut, of course, is that they've actually left some of the buildings that were
like that
were hit by the bullets and the bombs and so on. They've left them there as monuments.
Yeah, even I remember now in Beirut, when the day of the opening, my parents came, and my parents did not see this work, because I usually tell my father always what I am doing. But this particular work, I didn't tell them because I was so afraid how they would react. But again, it's something in the culture that we do not express feelings. It's completely different than here. Just keep it inside. I think that's also a part of the problem. That
especially when you're talking to your parents.
Exactly. They just kept it inside and then didn't say anything. And I didn't want.
Not until now?
Not until now, yeah. I mean, I didn't also talk because I know it's very sad for them, that thinking that this is going to happen or this will happen, you know, this assumptions that makes me feel afraid, and also them.
Well, what about the idea of their son smashing? Okay, Hrair, so we've run out of time, and let's just thank Hrair.
Thank you.